What's up, YouTube? All right. I'm going to skip the little preamble in this video. I'm not going to do it every video. If you want to support my channel, what you can do, and if you want to contribute to my channel, you can do so in the links. You can want to support me on Patreon, you can do so. I appreciate everybody that has supported me so far on Patreon and supported me on this channel. I want to go straight to the topic, which is load management. It's still a big topic today. A lot of people still criticizing it. A lot of people still supporting it. And I can see some of the arguments both ways. All right. But generally speaking, I come to the defense of those who are opposed to load management because I don't think that load management in itself first of all, the part of the problem is the word itself, load management. Sounds like a bad corporate term, you know what I'm saying? You know, it is what it is. But let's be honest. A lot of people want to say LeBron James started this. Nah, Greg Popovich started this. Greg Popovich started this a long time ago, like 7, 8 years ago. I think someone can fact check me, I might be wrong, but I think it might have been when the Spurs were on one of their rodeo trips. Once a year, the Spurs go on like a 5 or 6 game road trip while there's a rodeo going on at their arena. And I think during one of these games, Greg Popovich let his starters stay home, who were perfectly healthy, and basically just rolled with. He just rolled with his the bench, and I think he was fined $500,000 by the NBA. And I kind of understand that. The NBA was like, look, people pay to see the starters, and they don't pay to see guys who they got to look up, their names and see who these guys are. They pay to see certain people. And that's one of the big arguments that I have. Like, people do pay to see starters. They pay to see stars. They don't want to see, these second and third tier guys in the starting lineup if the star is healthy. But this is somewhat of a convoluted subject because some people don't seem to. I don't know. I don't want to say some people don't have common sense with it, but yeah, some people don't have common sense. Some people might say, "Oh, well, what about when such and such? What about Pippen and Jordan resting in the final game of the season? That's load management." That's not load management, man. Look, the criticism when it came to Kawhi Leonard, at least to me, was when people were under the impression that he was healthy and he was missing games. All right, Kawhi Leonard is a very quiet guy. Doesn't really speak much. Doesn't have any social media accounts. So there's not a lot of information being dissembled about him. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't communicate much. So people have to judge for themselves. Now in the playoffs, Kawhi was definitely limping last year. So we understood why he was doing it last year. But we were under the impression that he's perfectly healthy. So why is he still doing this strategy where he's probably going to only play at best 65 games? But now that we realize, now that we know that he's actually still injured and still is suffering from this chronic knee injury, now it's more justifiable for him to miss games, especially back-to-backs, because you don't want to risk further injury to this injury that he already has, which has been neutralized, I guess, or contained with this strategy from getting any worse and still allowing him to play at a high level. But the big criticism is if a guy's healthy and he's still not playing. Now, there's different reasons for a guy to do that. Sometimes some guys will do it for maybe the fact they feel like their contract is bad, and so they will purposely play up a minor injury and sit and hope that. Sometimes this could be a selfish thing. Some players can purposely sit and secretly hope that the team flounders without him to prove his worth, and hopefully he'll be rewarded with a big contract. My thing is, I understand the motivation behind that. I'm always pro player, but at the same time, I'm a fan. So I think that you're cheating the fans doing that, and I think the better strategy would be to go out there, prove, and to continue to prove why the organization is not valuing you the way they should, and come free agency, either they're gonna finally pay you what you're worth, or or if not, some other team is going to pay you what you're worth and then some. We all know the case of Michael Jordan. Jordan came into the league with a pretty good contract, a very competitive contract for 1984 standards. But by the late 80s, he was underpaid, and by the 90s, when he was winning championships, he was grossly underpaid. He was making like $2 million a year. But you had guys like what was his name? John Williams, Hot Rod Williams, making like $11 million a year. You had Larry Johnson with that $84 million on the contract in '94. Even though Jordan's out of the league then, and you had all these guys like Alonzo Mourning making $100 million, Juwan Howard making $105 million. And remember, this is back in the '90s, so you can only imagine how much money that would be now per inflation. Yeah, but these guys were making so much money back then, and Jordan was only making $2 million until the last 2 years when he got paid what he was worth, 30 and then $33 million. But then you got some guys who, you know, going back to my point before, who aren't playing because they just can't handle the enormity of being in a certain position, like a Draymond Green. All right, and they'll fake or play up an injury. It's just my opinion. But where some people lose me when it comes to the pro load management arguments is when they bring up older players and try to make examples and say they're hypocrites. Oh, well, look at all these games Bird missed, and look at all these games Barkley missed, and look at all these games that such and such missed. Well, Bird, I mean, first of all, Bird missed the entire, almost all of 88, 89 because he had surgery for bone spurs. And you got to remember, this is 1988. All right, so this is 30 years ago. Surgery was much more primitive than it is now. You know what I'm saying? So the recovery time was much more extensive. If I remember correctly, 87, 88, Bird averaged almost 30 points per game. Statistically, it was probably his most dominant campaign, especially offensively. But if I remember correctly, during the playoffs, during that series against the Pistons, Bird only averaged 10 points per game. And he was moving around like he had fucking rocks in his shoes. So you could tell something wasn't quite right with Bird. Found out he had bone spurs. Plus his back issue was getting worse. Subsequently, in one of the interviews, I've heard Bird say that if he would do it all over again, he should have retired after 88. Because after 88, it was nothing but misery for Larry Bird. Misery. Before every game, he, especially I would say after 89, he would have to have his spine manually manipulated to be stable enough for like 5 or 6 hours to play basketball. This is a man who, forget basketball, This was a man who had a back injury that if something went wrong, a wrong hit, he fell down a certain type of way, it could have possibly paralyzed him. But he went out there and played because of his love for the game, his love for competition. And he said the main thing that drove him was he wanted to play one more time against Magic Johnson. And if injury didn't derail him in 1991, it could have possibly happened that year. The Boston Celtics started off that season, if I remember right, 29-4 or 5 or 28-5, something like that. They had an excellent record. They were the best team in the NBA at the time, the best team in the Eastern Conference. But injuries took a toll on them, and they weren't able to recover from that. And they finished the season like 56-26, which I think might have been the second best record in the Eastern Conference behind the Bulls. But ultimately, it wasn't to be for Bird, you know. And while he did kind of meet his goal playing with Magic at Barcelona in '92, but not against him, um, stuff may have been practice. Well, Bird really was a spectator by that time anyway. You know, he really was just a spectator impersonating a basketball player. But you can never, you know, those type of guys, they don't exist anymore. The last of those breed, like I said, died out with Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan and those guys. And Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce. Those guys are gone. Those leftovers, those leftovers from an earlier era. They still had a lot of that old school flavor. You know what I'm saying? But that's gone now. You know, Isaiah Thomas. You know, I read somewhere where some guy said, well, maybe his career would have been helped if he did load management. Isaiah Thomas was retired, you know, by 32. His Achilles ruptured when he was 32 years old. Maybe so. Maybe, you know, load management would have helped him. But you know what? If he was the type of player that requested load management, he probably wouldn't have been the hardened competitor that he was. He probably wouldn't have been as driven. And he wouldn't have been the same guy that won 2 NBA championships, went to 3 consecutive NBA finals, and was one of the most dominant point guards, despite his diminutive size, in the history of the NBA. And, you know, the point being, when it comes to load management, you could not go to any of these players before and say, you know, look, we know, Barkley, that you got, you know, we know you're playing against the Utah Jazz, and, you know, a lot of talk in the media that Karl Malone's the best power forward in the game right now, and he's the man right now at your position. I know you're looking forward to playing against him, but yeah, we're gonna rest you tonight, man, because we just feel like you need to take a break. You think Charles Barkley would have went along with that? Nope. So the point is, man, while I do agree that Kawhi Leonard should keep going with this, I mean, it does seem to be preventing him from getting further hurt. At the same time, I think if a guy is healthy, he should play. If a guy's healthy, he should play. And also, another thing that someone made a point about, if Kawhi misses too many games this year, it can kind of hurt the team chemistry to an extent. It could hurt, like, because you would want him to be on the floor with with Paul George to an extent to get these guys familiarized with themselves as far as being able to play, and it would just increase their chances of having some success not only during this season but during the postseason. You know what I'm saying? What's the point of having these two dudes together if they're not playing with each other? So I don't know. It is what it is with that.